I'll call this regularly scheduled meeting of the Tennessee Real Estate Appraiser Commission to order. At this time, I would ask that from my left, beginning with Commissioner Standiford, that you would identify yourself and from where you are from for roll call.
Gary Standifer, Franklin.
Nancy Point, Rogersville.
Mark Johnstone, Jackson, Tennessee.
Norman Hall, Brentwood, Tennessee.
Fred McCara, Johnson City, Tennessee.
Okay, we do have 5 members here, which constitutes a quorum to conduct business. The regularly scheduled commission meeting is taking place in the downstairs first floor conference room of the Davy Crockett Tower, 500 James Robertson Parkway, Nashville, Tennessee. And notice of this meeting was posted on the Tennessee Real Estate website. At this time, I would entertain a motion to adopt the agenda for today's meeting on Monday, March 9th, 2015.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Hall has made a motion to adopt the agenda, seconded by Commissioner McCara. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Agenda is adopted for the March 9th meeting. The minutes of the previous meeting have been distributed. Are there any corrections or additions to the December meeting minutes? This is the December commission meeting minutes. Are there any revisions or additions to those minutes that need to be made?
December or is it January, Mr. Chair?
Apologize.
Okay, okay. The agenda says December, but we did meet in January. We are on January, is that right?
It should be January. You do have the January minutes in your packet.
Okay, all right. Excuse me, it's the January meeting minutes. Are there any additions or revisions or corrections to those minutes?
Make a motion to approve.
A motion to approve from Commissioner Hall and is seconded by Commissioner Standiford. Any discussion on those minutes? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the minutes have been approved for the January meeting. We're now ready for a report of experience, views, and recommendations. At this time, we'll hear those, and first applicant is Brittany Claire Netherland, and I believe Commissioner Collinsworth was interviewing her, and did you take?
Took that over.
You took Miss Netherland, okay. At this time, can you?
This is not a vote issue. We were just going over some of her reports for 500-hour.
This was, this was to approve a 500-hour experience review. No board action necessary on this. Okay, thank you for that report, Ms. Point. Mr. David Michael McClure also was scheduled for 9 a.m. And could you give us his experience recommendation?
I interviewed Mr. McClure and would recommend that his experience credits.
You've heard the report, the experience interview of the applicant, Mr. David Michael McClure, with the recommendation to approve the experience request. Does the chair hear a motion to adopt this member's recommendation?
So moved.
Commissioner Hall has made a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner McCara. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of approving this experience request signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Experience request has been approved. Commissioner Standiford, and I sat in as well with Commissioner Standiford and had the opportunity to interview Mr. Adam Lon Hill. And Commissioner Standiford, can you please report on that experience interview?
John Stone and I, or Chairman John Stone and I sat in on this or conducted this interview. Reports submitted a narrative report, 2 TDOT form report, review the narrative, and 1 TDOT report. Mr. John. Narrative was done at the beginning of Mr. Hill's reports were somewhat limited in their scope with regard to getting a good feel for someone's abilities. I'd like to ask for 2 additional reports, and we would ask that Mr. Hill submit option, if that's okay with Nicole, to relatively recent reports that you're comfortable with, that demonstrate those and they're okay, then we would not require another meeting. We could do that by phone or.
Thank you for that experience interview report, Commissioner Staniford. I'm thinking from the standpoint of board action, one thought process would be to allow, as Mr. Hill continues down this process, is to possibly approve the experience subject to Commissioner Staniford's okay. And then if he reviews those and it's okay, then and allows Ms. Avers to proceed with the application, that would keep from having to come back here next month or the next month. Is that something that would be, from a legal standpoint, is that legal to do that, Ms. Camber?
I mean,
It'd be basically approving his experience request subject to Commissioner Staniford's approval.
I think it's okay because if you don't want Mr. Hill to have to come back for another meeting, then it seems like that's probably
Because if we don't do that, he's gonna have to come back and we'll.
an issue with it.
I
And
have
he,
no issue with it. I was actually going to ask if the commission wanted to also approve him to go take the test while he's in the interim.
let's deal with that, and secondarily, let's deal with one issue at a time. If we don't do that, then, he wouldn't necessarily have to come back, but we would not be able to approve it if it is satisfactory until the next meeting, which may be April or it may be May. So I was just trying to keep the timeline moving. So that is, okay. All right. Then I would entertain it. Are you okay with that?
I'm okay with that. Also, it would
And I would talk about the reports, and then he would report back with Ms. Avers and said, it's a go. And then you could continue on. All right, you've heard the experience recommendation is, from Commissioner Staniford, is for Mr. Hill to submit 2 current reports representing his current work product, with the ability of Commissioner Staniford to approve that continuing of his licensing process with Ms. Avers. So this would be an approval subject.
Question?
Yes, sir.
Is that from training to certified general?
Well, what we're just approving is the experience. We're not approving the actual licensing portion.
I understand
But,
that.
but yes, that is correct. He is
Okay.
going from trainee to, that is his request, although that's not part of our bailiwick today.
Thank you.
Okay. A motion,
So moved.
okay, Commissioner McCara has made a motion to adopt that recommendation, seconded by Commissioner Hall. Is there any discussion?
I was just wondering.
You need to look it up. All right, any other discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, Commissioner Hall is going to give us an experience recommendation from his interview from Mr. John Carter Fitzgerald, and it is within his bailiwick to give us a great recommendation here.
Also, before I do this, I would suggest that the legal attorney might want to look up the legal terminology of ipsy-dipsy also, which is also a legal terminology.
Why not topsy-turvy?
I had the opportunity to interview Mr. John Carter Fitzgerald, goes by the name of Carter, and he's going from his reports, like all of our reports, none of them are perfect. However, for him to take the exam.
Okay, you've heard the report of the experience interview with Mr. Fitzgerald from Commissioner Hall with the recommendation of approval. Does the chair entertain a motion to
So
adopt
moved.
this recommendation? I have a motion to accept the recommendation by Commissioner Standiford, seconded by well, she head nodded, sorry. I wanted to pass the love around.
That's fine.
Okay.
I don't think the microphone picked that up, though.
That's true. That is true. So with that being said, since you were on record, then Commissioner McCarra gets the second. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, recommendation approved. That concludes the report of experience interviews. Now we are ready for the education report, and we would like to hear that report at this time. Commissioner
Also
McCarra?
look up Run Amok.
Run amok. Okay, that's another.
Where did you have that before I made my report, by the way, Ms. Akins? Anyway, you have the list of applications in there. The only one I was concerned about was 1833. I was a little concerned about the qualifications of the instructor for that. Oh, that's Commissioner Collinsworth. I'm sorry, he's not here. So no, I recommend that all these courses, including the individual courses that are listed at the bottom, be approved.
Okay, you've heard the report from the Education Committee with the recommendation that the commission approves the submitted coursework. Does the chair hear a motion to adopt the committee's recommendation?
I so move.
Second.
We have a motion from Commissioner Point, seconded by Commissioner Hall. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommendation for the coursework approval is granted. We are now ready for the director's report. Director Avers, you are recognized.
Director's report contains a summary of the budget information, updated through the quarterly of December, and the license status counts as of February 9th, which has been fairly consistent, although there has been a small trainee downcline with the beginning of the year, I've noticed. That's probably not surprising with the changing regulations. There are no legislative updates for this month. We will be, from now on, every month, I'll give a legislative update, including if there is none. Significantly, we got our ASC compliance review back. I included that in your packet, and the ASC said we have absolutely no findings, and they gave us an excellent rating, which is very good. There is, it's excellent. It's not very good, it's excellent, yes. So I was very proud of that. Staff and everyone worked really hard on that, including the board. So I'm very pleased with where we are currently. There is not a formal hearing for April, and applications are expected to be very low. However, I did put on there to cancel the April meeting, and I would like to revise that. Instead, I'd like to recommend that we have just the local members attend by coming to the location, and then the commission members who live further out commute or participate by teleconference, so that you don't have to drive all the way up here for a very short meeting. We have some complaints that are going to go over the 180 days that we shoot for if we don't have a meeting. So we really need to have a legal report next month. But that's going to be the substance of the meeting. We might have a couple trainees to interview too, so I want to keep a couple of commission members for that. But I really do expect the business of the commission to be very slow for the next month. So my recommendation is that we just plan for a very, very short meeting. If you want to attend, of course, you certainly may drive down, but I just don't think maybe that everyone would need to drive in for that one.
Is the board amenable, the ones from Johnson City and the far ends of the state, to doing a teleconference meeting?
You might have to explain the
Yeah, you'll
kind of
have
the
to.
mechanics of that, but I certainly am amenable to that.
Just call in. I'll get you the information before the next meeting. You'll just call into an 800 number, and we'll have a speakerphone in the middle of the room, and the video will record it.
That will be compliant with state law as far as procedure and so forth? Okay. And you and I can discuss the semantics of how it's going to work out later. All right, well, I would,
You
since
don't
we-
really need to vote on that one if you don't want to. If you,
Well-
you certainly can.
That's a good point, because I mean, it's still going to be cumbersome for Commissioner Staniford and Commissioner Hall to drive in, and if it's okay from Ms. Point and McCara and myself to do it by phone, why can't we just all do it by phone?
Well, the trainee interviews would be
Oh,
difficult that way.
that's true.
That was more of a technical question.
Other than that, yeah.
That's just for a technical question. It sounds like we've got a good game plan for it.
Well, I think it's just going to be an abbreviated version of a meeting.
From Mr. O'Brien's standpoint, the documents that we sign here, I guess Nicole could email those to each person, and we could sign them and email them back. Not for travel, but for the meeting time anyway.
I'll have to look into that for the.
Director has done such a great job. I'm wondering why we still got one left over. It's over a year old. We just can't get them to come to the.
It's a very complicated matter. It involves some very serious allegations. We have 2 investigators working on it. Because of the complexity of the case, and it involves more than one appraisal. Trust me, no one's chomping at the bit more than me.
Well, we've done such a great job. I keep using that word "we." Y'all have done such a great job of getting everything moved on through.
We'll get it there. It'll take some time.
Well, before we proceed on with the rest of the director's report, it may or may not require action of this board, but I would entertain a motion to allow for the option of the telephone meeting for the commissioners that would like that option next month for the April meeting.
Well, as a Johnson City representative, I move that.
We have a
particular-
motion from Dr. McCara to have that option available to us. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Standiford. Okay, discussion. Commissioner Hall, you're recognized.
Again, we're back to, I think what Nicole brought up. That is, if we have people who need to be interviewed, it still needs to be resolved.
Well, it would be, if you're a local, I mean, it's kind of, because you live in Middle Tennessee, I would think that she might assign that report to you. If it's a CG type report, or if it's a residential report, it might go to Mr. Collinsworth, somebody that's able to be here and to do those interviews.
Certainly, I don't intend to do this all the time. It's just this particular meeting had so little business that it didn't seem worth about the approximate $6,000 that a board meeting costs to call everyone into Nashville for a meeting. But given the importance of moving our cases forward, certainly if a complaint were filed against you and it had been lingering for many months, you'd want it resolved and moved timely. It's important that we keep these cases moving forward in a timely manner. Complainants wish those complaints to move forward. The respondents want them to move forward. The public wants to move forward, and the attorneys want it to move forward. So there is not an urgency. I mean, that might not be the right word, but there is a necessity to keep the complaints moving timely. And the trainees, the few that we do have, they want their licenses as soon as they can possibly get them. So those are the two things that I consider the most pressing business. So trainees, upgrading, and the complaints moving forward. Everything else kind of is the more day-to-day stuff that I can handle in an administrative role. We get very little other urgent business. Our office doesn't have.
Any other discussion?
What is that date in April again? I'm sorry.
I believe it's the 13th. The 13th, and I
Is that on a Friday?
very lucky.
Any other discussion? Not, if not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, recommendation approved. Still under Director's Report.
The Appraisal Qualification Board has released an additional exposure draft of the proposed revision to the 2015 Real Property Appraiser Qualification Criteria and Guide Note Number 9, which is on the background criteria, and I included those for the board review. Documentation. The Appraisal Standard Board of the Appraisal Foundation has released the summary of actions related to the 2016-17 USPAP, and I included those as additional documents for the boards to review. Policy number 6 on the director's report is policy number 2, and I included a summary at the back so that you can see how it says. It says it's no longer necessary as a provision as it is adequately covered in the rules under 1255-06-1 on reciprocity, which reads in part, a licensee or certificate holder who resides in another state, is currently credentialed in another state, and is active on the registry in another state must show that the licensee or certificate has successfully completed one 7-hour national USPAP course, or its Appraisal Qualification Board approved equivalent within the past 2 years, and that the licensee or certificate holder has met all continuing education requirements in the other state within the past 2 calendar years. The director recommends removal of this policy as it no longer is needed for clarification purposes. It's just redundant. The policy says, as prerequisite to renewal of a reciprocal real estate appraiser license or certificate, the non-resident license or certificate holder shall submit to the commission a copy of his or her renewed and/or current license issued by the resident or reciprocal licensure certification and 28 hours of continuing education, which must include a 7-hour USPAP update course. So the policy is just a reiteration of a rule that we already have. That one for a vote, if you would.
Move to accept.
We have a motion to accept. Commissioner McCara, is there a second?
I'll second.
Seconded Commissioner Point. Any discussion?
It doesn't read exactly the same way, but there is no additional requirement from
Effectively, there's no change.
the policy. You cannot create a requirement by policy that restricts additionally to a rule. Policies really are how the board will apply things and really can only restrict how staff is going to do something. So you can say staff will process applications in 5 days. That's fine, because the only restriction you're creating is on me. It's not creating a licensees. You can't write a rule for the licensees. You can't say we're not going to accept online education from other states. In the policy, you can do it by rule, but you can't do it by policy because it has to go through the rulemaking process and have the effect of. Policies are really kind of internal stuff, or how the board's going to interpret stuff. Mhm.
Any other discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The recommendation approved. Still under director.
Number 7, in a follow-up to the prior month's discussion about course approval as it relates to Commission Policy 10, as seen below, the director recommends amending the language to allow that a secondary course provider of AQB-approved courses may also be approved by the director if the information is also reviewed and approved by the education member. And I wrote a couple of different options. A is one option. The commission's director may automatically approve courses approved by the Appraiser Qualification Board, AQB, Course Approval Program, CAP. For approval of a CAP-approved course, the school shall attach the instructor information and IDEC approval, if required, to the course approval application. If the course is CAP-approved, but the course provider is a secondary provider, then the course and the instructors must also be reviewed and approved by the education member of the commission. Staff will maintain records of the communications, recommendations, and approvals, denials, alternate recommendations within the course files. As you can see, that recommendation is a restriction on staff, not on the licensee or course provider. An alternate consideration for this education policy could be all education could be sent to the education member for recommendation as received, and upon their approval, the director may approve courses as they are reviewed. This education review and approval could be presented to the commission at its meetings in the form of an education report on an ongoing basis where, if there were cause for the members to wish to evaluate a course in greater detail, alternate recommendations could be made. This approach would allow all course providers the opportunity to submit courses for consideration, CAP or not CAP approved, and would greatly reduce delay in course approvals. The education member, this one would read this way. The education member of the commission may review and approve courses. Staff will maintain an education report for presentation to the commission at public meetings. That one doesn't require CAP approval.
Question, what is a secondary course provider?
Well, an example of that would be like a course developer, like Hondros is a course developer. They don't generally offer courses. They write courses, and then they sell their course materials to course providers like Trees, and Trees is a secondary provider. So Hondros might get it CAP approved, but since they're not offering it, Trees is a secondary provider. So unless Hondros is offering it, it's not a CAP approved course. Whereas if Appraisal Institute gets the course approved, they're offering the course, and it is a CAP-approved course. So we have a policy where we can approve it internally as long as the instructor is approved.
Providers, when it comes to approving the instructors on those secondary provider courses, do we receive any feedback from the students on the instructor?
Only if a complaint is filed against the instructor.
Not my question. My question is, do we get a copy out after the course is taken? Because after every course I've ever taken, I ever have access to these instructor evaluation forms or not?
We could ask for access, and the course provider would have to give it to us, but we don't. They don't generally give it to us. There's one exception. One school always sends us theirs, but they're not required to.
Well, I reckon where I'm going with this is that it would appear to me that the course is being presented by a secondary provider, and their instructors for these secondary providers are only being screened by that secondary provider. Are we achieving the same as we would by a direct provider?
I don't think
Get
I
all the-
understand your
Okay,
question.
we get all the
Okay.
course materials, whether it's
What
a,
Material would be the same, is that
Yeah.
correct?
Course materials would be exactly the same, and the instructor approval is exactly the same. The requirements are exactly the same. It's just that with the secondary provider, they have to write a letter saying, we authorize you to use this course material. So that essentially showing that they haven't stolen the course material.
Who reviews the instructor critiques?
Don't require it unless we audit the course.
That's what I'm asking. Who is reviewing that information on the instructors,
The owner of the course.
the owner of the course? So as long as that person is bringing in plenty of money for that course, they're not going to rock the boat, are they?
And the only way the commission would step in is if a student or commission member filed a complaint against a course provider for the instructor failing to comply with the education requirements.
Where I'm coming from on this is when we had that young man come in here a couple months ago talking about he was really impressed with that computer that he looked at, but not very impressed with the person standing in front of him. It would appear to me that somewhere along the line, if he had filled out an instructor's critique, it might have raised a red flag as to that person to provide us with the opportunity to address that issue.
And I did speak to that person, and he never filled out a complaint form.
This has always been a concern, is the instructor, are they required to teach with those, or are they just approved by the
Instructors can become instructors in a variety of ways, so there is not a one. Have to review the education requirements.
do we have any criteria that sets forth instructor should have taught before? In other words, have you got experience, or are you like an attorney? You passed the bar and you know.
there are specific specific requirements for the instructors with regard to their education background, their professional background, et cetera.
But how about that teaching?
I think, I'd have to look at the form, but there is some reference, I believe, to previous experience.
But it's up to the organization that.
Well, they provide, of course, there are, in the application, the instructor has to provide a resume, a CV, and that will list previous teaching experience and other professional experiences. And the educational commissioner is the one who reviews those to make sure that they meet the criteria spelled out in our bylaws.
In the almost 9 years that I've been here, we've only ever received one complaint against an instructor. And that,
Not teaching then, no kill.
you know, and that complaint was filed by me, so. So, it's not people don't file complaints against instructors, so until they do, it's very,
I'm just
it's,
kind of curious how we could address that issue that had been raised about really that up to date on what they were teaching, or did not have the ability. It could be that they were no more than reading the book back to the people. Is all we can do, or is that something else we can do?
Well,
All those questions.
Well,
we'll take that under advisement, Commissioner Hall.
In reference to this item 7, it looks like we have two options, option A or option B, or we could devise our own option. But, or we could, put it off a month, or we can, I would like to ask Dr. McCara, based on all of the discussion that you've heard this morning, what is your recommendation?
Well, I
to
read this
Education
with
Chair?
great interest, and I don't have any particular preference between A and B. The only thing I was thinking of is sort of a something in between. Is with option A, you would send me the information, and I would make a recommendation to you, and then you would take it from there. In option B, I don't even have to do that. Am I right?
no, in either way, you're involved
Okay.
both ways, definitely. A really is just about the CAP-approved courses with secondary approvers. Currently, we just include primary CAP approval
Yes.
courses. This would loops in the course providers, the secondary course providers. B wraps in all course providers, like a lot of course providers, especially ones that offer seminars or local chapters, things like that, where they're not getting that national approval or aren't going to pay for CAP approval. It's just too expensive, too cumbersome, and they just want to get it approved in the state they're offering the course.
Option B actually incorporates option A, whereas option A does not incorporate option B.
Right.
Well, then,
With the commission, very potentially not meeting as often as it has in the past. Either every other month or quarterly now is what it's starting to look like. Do we want to consider a less frequent, do we want to delay our course providers offering courses? Or do we want to create a system where we keep the course approvals flowing on a regular basis? If Dr. McCara is willing to just report back, and Dennis and I can keep the education report up to date, and we report to the commission every meeting what was considered, what was approved. That's really A and B, but do you want it to just be CAP-approved courses with cap approved with secondary, or do you want it to be all course providers? That's really the questions at hand.
I think B works very, very well. Do you have a preference, Ms. Avers, about which of these that you prefer? Because I can live with either one of these, and I think this is a really excellent idea for being able to move the education courses along, even when we are not meeting on a frequent basis. But do you have a preference for either one of these?
I would actually like it to be B, frankly.
Then I will recommend that we favor choice B, option B.
Put that in the motion.
I will move that we accept option B.
Second.
I have a motion to accept option B from Commissioner McCara, seconded by Commissioner Hall. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommendation approved. Ready for item 8.
Okay, and in a similar vein, individual course approvals. Can we do the same thing for applicants who take a course that is not approved? Can have Dr. McCara
Move to
consider those?
accept.
Motion to accept that, Commissioner McCara. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Standiford. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommendation approved. Item 9.
Instructor approvals, same question.
Move to approve.
Motion to accept,
Second.
Commissioner McCara, seconded by Commissioner Standiford. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Makes my
Any
life easy.
opposed? Motion approved. Item 10.
All right, well, this is the last question. In that same vein, this is a workflow question, and I did run this past the appraisal subcommittee because I wanted to make sure we weren't doing anything to run afoul of getting ourselves potentially in a bad audit 2 years from now. For workflow, we currently process applications where the staff gets the application, we review the application for completion, then you do the experience interview, and we used to let them apply to take the test early if they wanted to, and then do their experience interview if they wanted to, or if they finished their experience interview, then they could take the test. Well, if staff reviews it and it is complete, they could go take the test, according to the subcommittee, as long as staff found that the education had been complete and that at least the number of hours of experience was complete. Some states don't even grant an applicant an experience interview until they've passed the test, because it's considered a waste of resources. If they can't pass the test, why waste the resources to interview them? I don't know if we want to go that far, say we're not going to interview you if you can't pass the test, but that's a commission decision. In this case, however, I think that, making applicants wait until after they do their experience interview is just causing a delay for them. All these people that we interviewed today had to wait a couple months to applying to take the test. If the staff can review the application, deem it complete, they could have that time before their experience interview is set to work on taking their test if the commission authorizes it. And I've written a policy down at the bottom. An applicant may be granted exam approval for the national AQB examinations for licensure or certification once it has been determined by Administrative Office of the Real Estate Appraiser Commission that all education experience requirements as well as application requirements are fully documented. That does not mean their experience has been approved. It just means that their application is fully documented.
Commissioner Hall, you're recognized, sir.
It appears this is a two-edged sword here. On one hand, we don't want to part of the reasoning is the fact that we don't want to delay them, and why should they have to wait? They take the exam and pass it. They come for experience review, like pass both, and if they can't get over the experience, making a difference, just point me to the courtroom and tell me which side I'm on. And he arguments right here on both sides of the coin that we could make a case for either one if you wanted to. Personally, I say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And right now, I don't think it's broke.
My experience, Chairman Johnstone, that regarding the cost or whatever, it would appear to me that it only process if the applicant has had the education. I know technically sound is only a benefit for the review process. So what I've seen, I think it would be beneficial to even consider having it mandatory that they take.
To go to your point on the, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, up until 2 months ago, they could take the test before, and many of them did show up with the test. You know, show up, take their experience interview, go upstairs and pay for their credential. Many of them did just that. It wasn't till this 2015 criteria kicked in that they could no longer do that. So essentially, we're just giving them an option to go back and, you know, not wait any longer than they absolutely have to. Right now, they just can't apply to take the test, you know, months or years early. You have to finish your experience first. You know, you can't just take it at the beginning.
Well, if in the 2015 criteria, when it came out, there had to have been some mindset somewhere along the line that it might be a good idea for them to wait, or it would have been incorporated into those, wouldn't it? I mean, somebody somewhere across this great state, a great nation, has thought it would be in the best interest to slow the train down a little bit. Because that's what it's done. And I'm just wondering, or was that something just somebody at the subcommittee, or not subcommittee, but when they were writing the criteria, just overlooked?
Bless you. Sorry.
Bless you.
It wasn't to delay them, though. All of these applicants will have finished their 2,000, 2,500, 3,000 hours of experience. So it's not that they are not done with their hours. These applicants will have completed their experience, and that's the reason that the AQB put it in there, is because this is an experience-based test. So if you don't have the experience, you're not going to have a very successful time passing the test. But since there was an ability before where if you really were cranking on your education, you could have taken all of your education in the first couple months of being a trainee and then taken your test and not have had any experience. And that's what went away. You can't do that anymore.
Well, from a personal experience, I have seen a trainee that went down that path and looked at some of those reports, and they're not that good.
Yeah, well, you can't do that anymore.
Yeah, so I'm not so sure that slowing it down may not be a good thing. And from the standpoint of that, in these experience interviews, a lot of times you're asking questions that I know I've seen on the test before, and they can't answer that question. They wouldn't have been able to pass the test, so at least you can give them some guidance on where they may want to bone up their skills before they get in there. So I'm not so sure that, you know, that having the test come later, as Commissioner Hall indicated, may not be a good thing.
All of these applicants, these aren't the new applicants. Everyone is going to have completed 24 months at minimum, at least 2,000 hours. I mean, this is for just license or anything other higher. All of their education, including the college requirements, everyone's going to have all of that completed just to get their foot in the door. This isn't the trainee taking it right out the gate like it used to be. These are the people ready to experience interview with you. We wouldn't give them exam approval until their appointment is booked. It's just that month or two while they're waiting to sit with you that they could be at the same time getting an appointment to take the test. We're talking about a month or two.
Chairman, I have a question for Ms. Avers. And I realize this is sort of out of my bailiwick, if you'll excuse me, but do you feel this is consistent with our, kind of prime directive to protect the citizens of the taxpayers of Tennessee?
I think it goes with the mission of, it goes with commerce, certainly. It slowing down someone's potential to making a living. I think we'd have to do everything we can, as long as it's within the guidelines of the laws and the rules, to get them in the business.
Well, I understand
that's-
that. I understand that, and I think it's very,
If they've done
beneficial.
everything.
It's very beneficial to the applicant. I just am thinking about, sort of our prime mission is not to the applicants, but to the taxpayers of Tennessee. And do you believe that that is consistent with that?
I don't think there's any harm to the public whatsoever, because they have done everything that is required by the AQB, by the board's laws and rules. There's nothing the subcommittee could find wrong with it. Lots of states are doing it. It's completely within compliance. It's just whether or not you interview them first. A lot of states don't even do the interview until they pass the test, just for a resource issue.
I just can't seem to wrap my head around why they wouldn't have put that into the criteria to begin with, rather than doing it one way and then all of a sudden us having to come back and change it. There had to be some mindset out there for whoever wrote that criteria and why it was done that way.
They didn't want the trainees taking it before their experience was completed. Their experience has to be completed, all of it. 2,000, 2,500, 3,000. It has to be completed before you can take the test. So that's what has to be done. They don't want anyone taking it before their experience hours and months are completed. But if staff reviews those experience logs and go, yep, it's completed,
It might not be acceptable experience.
it
could
might not be USPAP compliant, and that still has to be determined. But that process, as you well know, can be very lengthy.
Well, I would rather, this is a statement, this is, my opinion, I'd rather it be lengthy and precise and do what Dr. McCary has indicated that our job is to protect it. I mean, it's not to bend over backwards for the applicant to try to get them in as quick as we can. We're here to protect the public, and if it means taking an extra month to make sure we don't have faulty appraisers out in the field, so be it.
Well, they still have to complete all legs of that stool. They have to do the education, the experience, and the examination. Passing the test won't give them the credential. If you guys don't vote to approve their experience,
This won't
Nothing.
change the interview process one bit.
not a bit, not a bit.
mean,
You
it
guys
won't
don't vote
change
to
that at
approve their
all.
experience, nothing happens. That experience leg is still as important as any of the others.
I agree, but if you've got a checkbox of 6 items and you've got 5 of the 6 finished, and you're not a very competent appraiser, it might be easy to wiggle around and get that 6th one at some point in the future than it would be if you only had 4 of the 6 and you had to get through over 2 more hurdles. That incompetence might be more evident along the way. But at the end of the day, everybody on this board can vote how they want to, and we can move on.
Just to that point, though, I would think that would increase their competency level if they had passed it, particularly with the terminology and having to the experience.
I think you could probably argue it either way. So, any more discussion? Do we have a motion on the floor even? I'm not even sure we have a motion on the floor.
I'll move to approve.
Motion to approve, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a second. As a point of clarification from Ms. Keeling, does it require a majority of the members present or a majority of the members total for something to be passed? Because it would have to be all 5 if it's a majority of the members, and only 3 if it's a majority of the members present.
To my knowledge, it's just a majority of the members present.
Can we get is there a way to, you don't know?
It is the majority of the members present.
Okay.
You only have to have 4.
Okay. I know, because different bodies, it's different like that. I know in our county government, it takes majority of the members regardless of, so, okay. Well, you've heard the ruling, it would be a majority of the quorum present. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
No. So it's 3-2. Commissioner Hall, Commissioner Johnstone voting no. It does pass. Next item. Still under Director's Report, item
Right,
11.
I just taking notes. Last one, policy number 11 is redundant to Rule 1255 1.1210C pertaining to the direct supervision of a trainee. Director recommends this policy be removed as it is unnecessary, and I did include at the very end a copy of that rule. It's way down below, but it's redundant.
I'm sorry, I'm looking, is that original rule in there?
The rule is down below the policies.
Or down below the policies?
You look down below where it says policy, did a strike through on number 11, you can see then below that is the Rule 12. It goes on for pages. Direct supervision is.
What does policy 11 state?
Look just above on, it says page 19. Says accepting responsibility for signing and certifying the report complies with USPAP, reviewing and signing the trainees' reports, personally inspecting each appraised property with the trainee until they've completed their 500-hour experience affidavit.
Can I stop you? I see the rule, but you're referencing a policy number.
That's
I don't
policy
see it.
11.
Excuse me?
I thought that was your question.
Well, no, my question is there's a policy, number 11, and in the policy that I read as 11 says the education member, it's a 3-sentence policy under TREAC policies. And then Rule 125501 is a rule. That's a different animal. And so my question is, what is the policy 11 state? Because you say it's redundant to the rule, and I can read the rule, but I can't read the policy. Does that make
Policy,
sense?
the one that has a strike through,
Yeah, it's the one
Okay.
that's strike through. That was policy 11.
yeah, a supervising appraiser, et cetera.
Yeah,
So we're
Okay.
talking about the stricken policy 11, not the one that isn't stricken.
yeah.
Because there are 2 policy 11s under there. One stricken was not. Okay. Thank you.
That was policy 11.
I think what she's saying is when you strike through the 11 that you see stricken there, then there's a new number 11, and then that's what you see.
So in essence, the striking through the policy 11 is redundant because it's already covered in the Rule 1255, et cetera. Okay, I'm with you. Okay. Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
Or just me that's slow here?
No,
Okay.
but we appreciate the, making sure that I did understand it, so that's good.
Oh, me.
Right. Do we have a motion to approve this request under item 11?
I so moved.
Have a motion
Second.
on item 11 by Commissioner Point, seconded by Commissioner Hall. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, recommendation approved. Thank you. Now we're ready for item 1, and, well, actually, the TREAC policies.
That concludes the director's report.
Do we need to take any action on these stricken policies?
That was it.
All right, okay,
I just concluded
that handles
those.
all of them.
That handles all of them. I just included those so that you have a summary of them.
Mr. Chairman, before we move along, I would like to move that the commissioners go on record to commend Director Avers and her staff for their outstanding efforts in achieving a rating of excellent by the ASC.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? I'd like to say I concur.
We all do.
Oh, well, thank you.
I assume that was the vote.
Yes.
All in
right.
favor of, signify by saying clap. All right, that was unanimous. Unanimous ayes. And that is, and in all seriousness, that is outstanding that we have that. And it's also great that we've got Nicole taking such a leadership role in this Arrow and in all that she does throughout the country. So it makes us all look good. Thank you.
I think you guys will enjoy attending the Aero Conference. I know this is the first one that we've had in Nashville, and hopefully it won't be the last, but it's really going to be an amazing event. And I really encourage you all to participate in as much of the meetings as you can. Spread out, suck in the knowledge. There's going to be so many amazing people at this conference. Enjoy it. It's going to be fun.
We're-
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
I
sir.
have one question. Under the policies, in the TREAC policies,
Uh-huh.
under item 9, down there,
Yes.
and I reckon 5 is also to some extent along the same line. One of them relates to an AMC applicant, yes to a question on the character information, and the offense is 5 years old or older, and the offense does not fall under blah, blah, blah. The executive director, blah, blah, may approve the AMC application without presentation to the commission. Could you just give me a bird's eye view of what we're talking about here?
Eyes and such.
Fraud, no bank robberies, no adultery, nothing.
Well, we haven't had a case of, a felony case of adultery.
In the case of,
But if we get one, Mr. Hall, I'll bring that one to your attention.
But I mean, these, I assume that the answer to yes would be mostly you DUI, or I got a speeding ticket or something like that. Would that be? what we're
Minor
talking
offenses,
about?
minor offenses,
Okay.
misdemeanors that are 5 years or older.
No beating your wife offenses, anything like that?
And these would be things that were unrelated to appraisal activities, am I right? Okay.
Of course, anything that I felt uncomfortable making a decision on, it says I can bring anything to the commission if I feel uncomfortable about it, and I have.
The reason I asked the question on that one, I recall that previous meetings, we did have an that one. I was just trying to get a clarification as to what we would or would not.
Less than 5 years old, it would come before you. Or if it's more than 5 years old and it's very serious offense.
questions for the director before we move to legal report? No legislative update, so that concludes the director's report and the legislative update. We're now ready for the legal report. Ms. Gamber, you are recognized.
Okay. Actually, before I start, there's 2 additional items on the supplemental report. I'm gonna go ahead and just pass these down. Not starting with the supplemental, I just thought it was a good time to hand them out.
Are we starting with this one that you just handed out, or are we
No, I
starting?
didn't mean to confuse you. We're just gonna start with the original one that you guys have on your iPads. I just didn't want to surprise you at the end and you think you were finished, and then I'm like, oh, wait, there's a supplemental. I wanted you to be prepared. Let me know when you're ready for me to start. he's not ready. He's not ready. He said he's not ready.
Right, so everybody had an opportunity to read that? Question for Ms. Gamber. The first recommendation was to review and adopt reviewing board members' recommendation.
Are you on the original one with the 6 items?
Well, I'm on 2014014951
Okay.
and 2014-952.
Yeah, that's where we're gonna start. So that's good.
Representation.
Yes.
And the original reasoning was a consent order requiring a sales comparison approach course or general highest and best use within 180 days. And so we went from that to a closed with no further action. I don't know, how do we get from A to, that's a big jump, and I don't understand how we got
It
there.
is a big jump.
I just don't understand that.
Okay, so let me just reference these 2 items for the record. So we're on item number 1, 2014014951 and 2014014952. And this is a representation from the December 2014 meeting where one of those, it was an either or continuing education consent order was authorized. So then after the consent order was sent out to both of these respondents, it was a supervisor and a trainee. They requested an informal conference with Executive Director Avers and I. We had that conference on January 20th, 2015, and then as a result of that conference, this is the new recommendation.
Okay, let me ask you, the 2014 meeting was a review and adopt the reviewing board members' recommendation.
Correct.
And that's where we came with those two, with
Correct.
that
That's,
recommendation.
that's how the consent order for the
What-
continuing education resulted.
Was the board member that reviewed that involved in the informal conference?
No.
Board member informed about all of the new data that came forward out of the informal conference before y'all made this recommendation? Who was the board member that reviewed that?
Mr. Sandifer. I mean, this is just based on what we saw in the informal conference. Certainly, if you take issue with it, we're
I don't know,
welcome
I'm just trying to, that's a big jump from 2 classes and for a supervisor and a trainee to go to close with no further action.
Right.
Without the person that had been involved in the review at least being informed of it, because, I mean, I just think that, Commissioner Stanford has a good concept and grasp of appraisal criteria, and not that you're not well-versed in the legal field, Ms. Gamber, but I'm just,
No, I understand what you're saying.
this is a question, I'm throwing it out there.
And I understand what you're saying. And in this particular informal conference, a lot of times when we do these, we don't really get a lot of extra information, and it's kind of,
Got a lot of extra
this
information.
one seemed to be, they seem to clarify a lot of things in this
Why
one.
didn't they clarify all that before we spent all that time the other day dealing with this issue?
That I do not know.
I would think that would be, the time for clarification would be when the door opens, not when the door is closing.
Right,
Commissioner Stanford,
and also with the informal conferences, we don't really put it out there as an option. They request these, and then if they do, we automatically just go ahead and do them. But I understand your perspective too.
Commissioner Stanford, what's your take on it?
My question would be, did they supply additional information?
Additional data that was referenced from, not within the work file, but from additional. Very unusual property because it was an estate and the it's my opinion, there may have been issues, but I think that it would be an especially weak case if it was.
Meet use PAP at a minimum when you look at it? I mean, if you took bare bones of use PAP, Mr. Stanford, did it meet that?
There were items, but again, as I pointed out, there was
Based upon the information available at that point in time. And I believe that additional information has come forward now, and
Motion to accept recommendation of council by Commissioner Hall. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner McCara. Any discussion? Not all in favor, signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Recommendation approved. Item 2, 214-024581.
Item 2, 2014024581. This complaint was filed by a homeowner regarding a property that is located in a National Historic District, which consists of 60 single-family homes and 2 duplexes. The complaint alleged that respondent's appraisal lacked due diligence and that respondent used inappropriate comparable sales data. In addition, the complaint alleged that the photos taken were outrageous. In particular, the 5 of the back compound holding the HVAC units and the discolored basement wall. Respondent had the size of the building wrong, and respondent was not consistent in his adjustments. Respondent sent a response to the complaint stating that as noted in the addendum, market studies reveal no change in value due to time. The 3 most recent sales from the subject development were utilized as sales 1 through 3, while sales 4 through 6 were similar older homes taken from historic neighborhoods. The sales utilized in the report were considered the best sales by respondent. Sales 1 through 3 were located in the same subdivision as the subject. Sales price per square foot adjustment has been taken from market and conversations with realtors that work the inner city market area. No attempt was made to skew the subject's value, and the appraiser has no bias with respect to the subject property. Respondent also states that complainant's home was measured properly as complainant accompanied him while all areas were being measured. The appraisal report was sent to an expert reviewer for review. The reviewer stated that he read the appraisal and cross-checked the comparable sales. The information presented in the appraisal appears to be factual. The reviewer stated he also examined the alternate comparable sales submitted by complainant. The analysis and conclusions set out in the appraisal appear credible and no violations of USPAP were found. Therefore, my recommendation is to close with no further action.
Move.
Recommendation for close and no action by Commissioner Hall, seconded by Commissioner Point. Any discussion? Not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommendation approved. Item 3, 20140. This weekend. We'll stand adjourned for 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank goodness.
Sure.
Okay. Oh, sorry. Does he have to get us back on that?
Ready, Ms. Gamber? We're on item 3, 20140255051.
Hey, this complaint was filed by a consumer and alleged that respondent developed his opinion of value of the subject property inaccurately due to respondent utilizing inferior properties. The complaint alleged that 3 of the properties were substantially less expensive than the subject and 1 property was over $100,000 higher. Respondent sent a response to the complaint stating he is shocked by the accusations made by complainant and disagrees with the allegations. Respondent stated this property was not listed by a realtor by the seller. Respondent stated that when he asked the seller where he got his asking price, the seller had no clue. The complainant in this matter is from out of state, somehow saw the house and fell in love. Respondent stated that when his report showed the current comparable sales, the complainant got furious and made the complaint. Respondent stated that complainant submitted another list of comparable sales, however, respondent found that they were not comparable. The first 2 sold over 2 years ago and were not even remotely in the subject's market area. Respondent stated that his comparable sales were most accurate and that he simply reported the market area. There are some lengthy reviewers' conclusions listed there. So I'll give you a second to look over those.
Had an opportunity to read this case and the reasons and your recommendation?
Okay, the recommendation is for the authorization of a civil penalty in the amount of $500 to be satisfied within 30 days of execution of the consent order, and a 15-hour advanced residential applications and case studies course, and a 15-hour residential appraiser site valuation and cost approach course to be completed within 180 days of execution of the order, such terms to be settled by consent order or formal hearing.
Heard the recommendation? Oh, you're recognized.
I'm just kind of curious, we're going to be recommending 30 hours, 15 hours advanced residential application and case studies, and a 15-hour site valuation and cost approach. From reading, any of it has any validity, it would appear to me that advanced residential and a 15-hour residential appraisal site valuation and cost approach might be more. Comments were made concerning the site valuation. $500 fine and just the residential site valuation and cost approach, and not requiring the
Comments? If not, would you like to make that revised recommendation in the form of a motion?
civil penalty and a 15-hour residential appraisal site valuation and cost approach.
Heard the motion. Commissioner Hall, is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Staniford. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommendation approved. Item 4, 20140278811.
This complaint was filed by an appraisal management company regarding an appraisal review that was done by respondent and contained the following deficiencies: failure to note the inaccurate subject improvements description, failure to note an adequate analysis and verification of the subject purchase contract, failure to note the inappropriate comparable sales selection, inadequate or misleading reconciliation of value, and inadequate commentary regarding analysis and methodology. The original appraisal and update completed for this purchase transaction were found to be materially deficient, and the appraiser was reported to the state in compliance with Dodd-Frank legislation. Therefore, the client ordered a retrospective field review, and it was assigned to respondent appraiser. Respondent sent a response to the complaint stating that with regard to the subject improvements description, the subject was described in the original report as a modular home of comparable quality to frame-built homes. Respondent researched the comparability of modular and frame-built homes and found that in many cases, Fannie Mae does not consider the two to be drastically different in quality. In respondent's opinion, the improvements were described accurately. The client indicates that the subject was not a modular home, but the client did not provide respondent with specifications or information that would enable him to know anything materials used. With regard to the contract, respondent stated he does not recall receiving a copy and stated so in the review. Respondent stated that, in hindsight, he should have pushed the client harder to provide one, as it more than likely would have included a list of materials and specifications. With regard to the comparable sales selection, respondent stated he felt the original appraisal adequately stated that the location of the subject and the unique quality would necessitate sales that were in similar but more distant neighborhoods. Respondent felt the 7 comparable sales were adequately bracketed in terms of size and sales price. There were no other similar modular sales available, and in respondent's opinion, it was not appropriate to use sales or listings up to 12 miles away. With regard to the reconciliation of value, respondent stated he does not know how to respond to this issue due to a lack of specificity. With regard to commentary regarding analysis and methodology, respondent stated that the original report covered the unique nature of valuing a higher quality modular home in this market. Finally, in the event the subject was not a modular, respondent feels more information should have been provided by the client before sending the assignment. Respondent only saw the subject from the street and did not go inside. The reviewer's conclusions, as well as respondent's response to the reviewer, are listed there. So I guess take a few minutes to look at that and then let me know when you're ready for the recommendation.
I had an opportunity to review the comments. Amber, can you give us your recommendation?
The reviewer found several noncompliance issues with USPAP when considering completeness, adequacy, credibility, etc. Respondent admits to his oversights. As such, council recommends the authorization of a 15-hour residential report writing course to be completed within 180 days of execution of the order, such terms to be settled by consent order or formal hearing.
Heard the legal counsel's recommendation. Any discussion?
Just a question. In some cases, you will impose a monetary penalty. In this particular one, you did not. Is there some basis for when you decide that a monetary penalty is called for, in other cases not?
Well, I look at the disciplinary history. In this case, there was none, and I found that the respondent's response was adequate. So I didn't feel like I didn't feel like that was necessary.
So there's no hard and fast rules. It's a
No, I kinda
judgment
just-
basis?
Yeah, I'm just trying to take everything into consideration.
Okay.
Which is why I present it to you guys.
Well, right. But
He also kind of owned the mistakes too, and that certainly shows some measure of at least learning from his mistakes.
so a mea culpa is a way of avoiding some cash problems.
Sometimes, depending on how severe the issues are.
Right, if you have a pattern of practice of making mistakes, that's not necessarily going to clear the issue.
Since this was a first offense kind of situation, you felt that some mercy was appropriate here.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Motion for approval as recommended.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve as recommended by council from Commissioner McGarrett. Is there a second? Jennifer. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommendation approved. Item 5, 2014-029-031 and 20.
Complaint was filed against respondent supervisor and respondent trainee by a commission member who noted various USPAP violations when reviewing 3 appraisal reports for respondent trainee's experience interview. The appraisal reports were then sent to an expert reviewer for review. The complaint alleged that the report did not include a scope of work, intended use or intended user statements, definition or its source for the value given, signed certification, etc. There was no discussion of prior involvement with the subject over the last 36 months, and the trainee was not mentioned as providing assistance with the assignment. The complaint also alleged that the appraisal was completed on a Fannie Mae Form 1004. Is that how that's referenced? Fannie Mae Form 1004?
Sure.
Okay. And the value indicated in the form is an opinion of market value. A different form should have been used if market value is not being given. Respondent supervisor sent a response to the complaint stating that respondents failed to provide the USPAP form, which included all of the information when they sent in the appraisal to the client. This form was missing on many of respondents' past land appraisal reports and some of their residential UR/AR reports as well. Respondents stated it was an oversight which has been corrected. All reports which now leave their office contain either this form or other forms where the proper USPAP compliant information is included. With regard to discussion of prior involvement with the subject over the last 36 months and respondent trainee not being mentioned, respondent stated this goes back to the recent inclusion of a USPAP identification page, where this information is commonly inserted within all reports leaving the office at the current time. It was not mentioned within the complaint, but this report was also lacking the scope of work statement. Respondent stated again that the inclusion of the USPAP ID page satisfies this requirement, as this statement is included on all reports that now leave the office. With regard to the report indicating that it is not a market value appraisal, respondent stated that the majority of their work is for HUD, REO, and USDA REO properties for several different clients. In these cases, they specify that respondent provides the appraisal on the Fannie Mae Form 1004 due to the fact that many times when these properties are being purchased from HUD and USDA, the original appraisal completed by respondent's office prior to any contract or offer is the only appraisal needed for the purchase, even though respondent did not complete the appraisal for any future purpose. This is the reason respondent includes the verbiage in bold type, "This is a liquidation value appraisal. This is not a market value appraisal." Respondent believes that this bold type statement directly on page 2 with the opinion of value and also on page 3 of the Form 1004 with the value definition is quite sufficient to inform the reader of the nature of the report. Additionally, it is required that respondent provides the appraisal on the Fannie Mae 1004 so that the report meets all UAD requirements for these loans. Respondent stated that he and his trainee take this matter very seriously and are continuously making strides to ensure they produce the most professional and USPAP compliant appraisals. Respondent supervisor stated that the response has been reviewed by respondent trainee and he concurs with the conclusions herein. I've listed the reviewer conclusions here as well as respondent's response to those conclusions. Response on this one is also to be taken for both of them, the supervisor and the trainee. So I'll give you a second to look over that.
Thank you, Ms. Gamber. Comments? Ms. Gamber, can you tell us your recommendation?
Respondent admits to omitting multiple pieces of information from the appraisal report with no explanation as to why, except to say that it is an oversight. As such, counsel recommends the authorization of a civil penalty in the amount of, oh, that is not what I meant to say. It's supposed to say 500. I don't know why it says 1,000. So we're going to say 500. I'm really sorry about that. Yeah, the authorization of a civil penalty in the amount of $500 to be satisfied within 30 days of execution of the order, and a 30-hour basic appraisal procedures and a 15-hour residential report writing and case studies course to be completed within 180 days of execution of the order to be settled by a consent order or formal hearing.
Heard reasoning and recommendation from council. I have a question, point of information question from council. Is that $500 for both, or is it combined? Was that 500 to be split between the two, or each?
It would be each.
Okay, we need to should we specify that in there?
We should. Let's say this again. So it would be council recommends the authorization of a civil penalty in the amount of $500 for each respondent.
That does come to 1,000, by the way, so that might be where that.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there. I'm sorry. And then, of course,
I have another question. So they were in for experience interview, and then it got turned in at that point for review. And that's when all of these things came to light. And looking at the past history, just, within less than a year or a year prior, there was 2 letters of warnings for both the trainee and so they've been on the hot seat pretty,
it's not their first
it's not the
complaint.
first rodeo.
Yep.
And,
I wasn't gonna say it that way, but
well, it's just, it is what it is. It's tipsy-turvy.
yeah, ipsy
But
dipsy.
anyway, that's,
Twice before.
yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess for one thing, is this trainee being trained properly? That's a concern that I have, that there's already been 2 violations for a trainee that's not even licensed. Trainee, whether it's he or she, they may be great, but they're getting poor supervision. Or it could be, a whole host of issues going on here.
Warnings are not discipline, and they never admitted to doing anything wrong, and we never proved them to have done anything wrong. We warned them not to do something. So this would be the first time where if they admitted to discipline or accepted it,
That's true.
that they maybe had. But that is yet to be determined.
In reading over the, is with regard to the direct comparison approach, respondent stated he was not familiar with this approach. What's the educational background of this trainee? I mean, I realize recall it sounded like to me he needs to go back to the basic 101.
I know that made me snort when I read it.
I have no problem here with the education. I'm just wondering if this is sufficient, if he needs to go back. I mean, is this the sponsor, or is this a trainee who'd never heard of a sales comparison approach?
The supervisor is the one who provided the response, but then he stated that the trainee concurs. So I guess
The
take that for
supervisor
what it's
wrote
worth.
that, and the trainee concurred,
Correct.
that they did not understand what that approach was.
I really think we need to increase the civil penalty in the amount of $1,000 each. Would be my, I don't know how anyone else feels, but I think it would get their attention. Maybe.
I'm still trying to figure how did they get this far along the system and never knew what the direct comparison approach was. And I find that difficult to believe, that you might want to go back and check their educational background and send those providers a copy of this and say, what are you teaching?
I'm sure they've just been told it was called the sales comparison approach all along.
No,
That
that's-
comparison.
That's true, yeah. Okay, well, do we have a motion to accept or revise this recommendation?
Did we ever respond to Commissioner Point's recommendation?
At this point, we wanted to
Right.
raise it to 1,000.
Well, is that a motion at this point?
I can make it as such.
Please, so.
What about the education?
I don't know, so I was wondering, is that enough education?
Is that enough? That's
It's 45 hours of education.
5 hours, that's a lot.
Hopefully they'll
It's not going to be
understand.
cheap.
Hopefully when they come out, they'll understand what direct comparison approach is.
I would like to make the motion that we do the $1,000 each as a civil penalty and the continuing education as noted.
Okay, you've heard Ms. Point's motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Hall. Any discussion? Not all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, recommendation approved. Item 6, 2015002441.
Complaint was filed by the administrative staff of the Tennessee Real Estate Appraiser Commission against Respondent Appraisal Management Company due to a notice of cancellation of surety bond with an effective date of January 15th, 2015. Staff sent a letter to Respondent on December 18th, 2014, requesting that Respondent provide proof of a valid surety bond in the amount of $20,000 as required. Respondent AMC sent a response to the complaint on February 11th, 2015, stating that Respondent is no longer doing business as of July 2014 due to the sale of all its assets. They requested in writing that staff remove Respondent from the active list of AMCs voluntarily surrendering their license. Recommendation is to close with no further action.
Legal counsel's recommendation, any discussion? Motion for approval of recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Commissioner Standiford motion, seconded by Commissioner Hall. To close with no further action, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Recommendation approved. Now I'm on the one that, the documents that were passed out just prior to us starting the legal report, and this will be item 12014030361.
Complaint was filed by an appraisal management company and alleged that the report failed to adequately analyze subject sales, listing history, and purchase contract. The complaint also alleged inappropriate comparable sales selection. Do you need one?
Oh, I have one.
Oh. Inaccurate or misleading comparable property information, inadequate or misleading reconciliation of value, and inaccurate comparable sales that do not adequately support the opinion of value. Respondent sent a response to the complaint stating that the subject sales and listing history and contract were analyzed and the findings were stated in the report. The subject had a previous sale for $180,000 on October 31st, 2012, which was noted on the analysis of prior sale or transfer history of the subject property and comparable sales. The current opinion of market value is higher than the last transfer in the last 36 months due to increasing market values. Additional comments were added to the addendum in response to the client's request for clarification. This addendum shows manufactured home sale prices have increased in the subject county from the previous year to the effective date of the appraisal. Respondent stated that he realized there were typographical errors in the contract section and that it should have read as follows. The contract states that personal items are included in this transaction, but not included in value. No seller concessions, no contingencies, and no repairs are noted within the contract. The contract is fully executed. With regard to reconciliation of value, respondent stated he placed equal weight on all sales. The listings also support the opinion of market value. The opinion of value reflects the mid-value range. The subject is a manufactured dwelling situated on multiple acres. Limited manufactured home sales were found of similar size, acreage, and amenities. The intention of the respondent was to bracket all aspects of the subject per scope of work, not to be misleading. In conclusion, Cell 2 was utilized in an effort to bracket subject acreage. In retrospect, respondent realizes Cell 2 is not a reasonable market value indicator. Respondent regretfully acknowledges that the report contains errors. In order to avoid such errors in the future, respondent stated he has implemented additional procedures which include the following: obtaining further clarification of clients' expectations regarding appraising complex properties, seeking peer consultation, stating reports more clearly, etc. Respondent stated he strives to complete reports less hastily and be more observant in reporting his findings. The reviewer's conclusions are listed there. And respondent also provided a response to the reviewer's conclusions. He did indicate that his response to those conclusions, he was going to focus on what he had done since then to try to make corrections. So just let me know when you're ready for the recommendation.
Comments and Ms. Gamber, could you please give us your recommendation?
Respondent has been licensed as a certified residential appraiser for almost 9 years with no prior disciplinary action. As such, counsel recommends this matter be closed with a letter of caution as to future appraisal reports.
From council, any discussion or is there a motion to approve?
To approve.
Motion to approve, Commissioner Hall. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Standiford. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Recommendation approved. Item 2, two.
Before we move on,
yes, sir.
Chairman, I read something in here by the reviewer that I was really not aware of. Have no interior pictures of the barns or the garage. That's not a use map requirement, is it?
Requirement if it's an assignment condition, depending on. Right. They get like the,
I just think sometimes the reviewers get a little bit overboard.
well, it'll depend. They'll see the assignment, like the work order, the, order, and if the engagement letter says you will, take interior photos of all outbuildings, then that became an assignment condition, and if the appraiser didn't do it, then they
No.
technically violated the scope of work.
But we don't know if that was there or not.
I
there,
don't know off the top of my head.
But they cited the 4 standard rules, but I concur with Commissioner Hall. There's nothing in USPAP that dictates that. However, it could have been in the client's scope of work, but we don't know what that is. I will say this, this particular respondent is doing their best to become better. So, all like this, we wouldn't have any problems. We through with that one? Okay, item 2, 2014-03-0551.
Complaint was filed by a fellow appraiser and alleged that respondent has done an appraisal on a subject property which was located over 40 miles away from respondent's office. In addition, the complaint alleges respondent used another city's MLS in his report, which he has no access to. It was also alleged the appraisal contained a significant number of errors and USPAP violations that include not properly disclosing the listing history, incorrect zoning, incorrect real estate taxes, not reporting that the subject is on a busy street or facing a school, using comparable sales that are superior in quality, inaccurate present land use, and inaccurate marketing and exposure time. Respondent sent a response containing the appraisal report and work file only, but no written response. The reviewer's conclusions and respondent did send a response to those conclusions are listed there. So let me know when you're ready for the recommendation.
Everyone had an opportunity to read through. Ms. Camber, could you give us your reasoning and recommendation?
The reviewer found that portions of Standard 1 and Standard 2 of USPAP were not reasonably followed in the preparation and reporting of the appraisal report. Respondent has had prior disciplinary action taken against him. As such, counsel recommends the authorization of a civil penalty in the amount of $500 to be satisfied within 30 days of execution of the consent order. Such terms to be settled by consent order or formal hearing.
strictly a monetary
Correct,
penalty, no coursework.
unless you want some.
Heard council's recommendation, any discussion or a motion or amendment?
Two relatively, well, within the past 6 years, consent orders with the
Additional requirement in conjunction with these prior consent orders?
There was, so probably not, no. Report writing, but he is, very close to retirement age, and he was pretty angry about the whole.
The, one, in reference to the, in looking at the disciplinary history on the other reports, none of them, they all say consent orders. Well, some of them say in education. It doesn't say what it was, but it says and. Right? Motion to approve council's recommendation by Ms. Point. Is there a second? Seconded by Dr. McCara. Any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Approved. Anything else on the legal report? Squire?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Just don't call me a squirrel and everything will be fine.
Esquire? Esquire? It's a term for attorney. Okay. All right, that concludes the legal report. Is there any new business that we need to bring up? We're scheduled for lunch, but it's, if y'all want to break or if we want to press on with any particular new business and adjourn, we can do that.
Motion to adjourn.
No, well, we still got new business if there's any. Although a motion to adjourn does take precedence over anything if it gets a second and passes. So is there a second on the motion to adjourn? Not, okay, it fails.
Okay.
Robert's rules would have done that. I had a guy do that to me when I started a meeting. I'd open it up and then he makes a motion to adjourn to see if I was swift on my Robert's rules.
Thank goodness you are.
Okay, any new business, Director Avers?
I have none.
Good. Well,
Would
would you like to do that motion to adjourn again?
I'm voting against it, no.
I move to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn for Dr. McCara, seconded by Commissioner Point. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn approved.
You didn't ask who opposed?
Who opposed? Any opposed?
We don't want to hear it.
We stand adjourned.
Norman always fun.
That's
Has to
funny.
be.
It's gotta be, yes it
Otherwise, it's
is.
not worth doing it.
Yeah.